Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock. Let's go over with market, what is happening to Tesla, what we can expect moving forward, right? It's in a bit of a, honestly, Tesla's in a bit of a peculiar position here. So I'll give you my honest thoughts and yeah, let's jump into it. If you enjoy, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice and I'm not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, updates, etc. Well, again, I do have that YouTube membership where I share my thoughts, post updates every single day as the market is open. So definitely check that out. That link is of course down below in the description of the video. Just click that and you can join if you're interested. For just $3 a month. You get access to all my Tesla updates, broader market updates, etc. And of course, options flow, all that good stuff. $5 includes Nvidia to that bundle as well if you're interested. And then $7 includes the whole package, right? You get access to tier 3 posts, essentially other stocks in the market that are setting up something nice. And you get access to the private Discord where there's a tier 3 chat room, members, chatting, discussing ideas, day trading, etc. And also on Sundays, I do chart requests every single Sunday. But Tesla, jumping into it, 1.8% green on the day, closing at $460.50 per share, which compared to the market is going to be, arguably, pretty much in line with the market for the most part. So nothing, good or bad necessarily. But admittedly, the stock is in a difficult position here. And I say difficult because, I'm not going to have an answer as to what I think the stock is going to do next every single video, every single day, right? And unfortunately, this is unfortunately one of those days where I'll be honest, I'm not very confident in either direction. So I mentioned yesterday I was, in kind of neutral, maybe slightly leaning bullish, but kind of neutrally staged, right? Today has good stuff, but the follow through is what I'm not a fan of. So let me explain. So let's go over to, let's go 15-minute chart, for instance, right? So you can see today, right? We ended up breaking past this sort of resistance point at around 461.5, right? Got a rejection here, got pretty close to a rejection here. But the point is the fact that this 465 region is also where we rejected all the way over here, right? Not 465, sorry, 461.5, I meant to say. That's the level that we broke today, right? We broke today and we actually went above it and we actually rallied all the way up to about 467, which is good, The issue is the fact that the follow through, the first half of the day was great. This is exactly what I wanted to see, but the second half, not the best thing, right? I definitely want to say it's the worst thing, but definitely not the best, right? It's just, it's okay. It's okay. I wouldn't say I'm, looking at this and feeling like overwhelmingly bullish, but the way I'll be looking at this moving forward for Tesla going into tomorrow is if Tesla, and the most ideal scenario for me right now, Tesla's getting a gap up, which is essentially what Nvidia did, right? Nvidia, just, I'll go over this more in my Nvidia video itself, obviously, but, Nvidia had these kind of, rejection right here. You can see yesterday at the green Fibonacci's. And then what did it do today? It gapped up to 193, and then it turned this level that it was a resistance yesterday with the Fibonacci into a support today. And then obviously just, completely blasted off 5%, which is very impressive. This is kind of what Tesla wants to do, honestly, and arguably even moving as fast as this, right? And the reason I say it wants to move fast is, I'll go over more of that on the 4-hour and the 1-hour, but the SMI is the main reason I would want to see it move fast. And, a main target to the upside, if we do get something like an Nvidia type move, gap up and go sort of type scenario, yeah, I do think closer to about 480, it becomes a real possibility. But we didn't really get the best follow through today, right? We got that breakout, we got above that 461.5 level, which is all good here, which is fine. And then we ended up getting a nice little move to the upside, and then we just kind of collapsed and kind of just did nothing. So moving forward, at the very least, Tesla wants to hold this range right here, right? Kind of this region right here where you can see it was a kind of a, resistance here. Now we're trying to turn into support as well, right? Pretty much 459, 460. That's the level Tesla, in my opinion, wants to hold. If we start losing this right here, pretty much below 459, really, then the weakness is just, it's kind of like at least short-term setting in a little bit further. And, maybe we'll have to wait a bit longer before we see something a little more meaningful to the upside, right? So that's the way I'll be looking at it, right? But that's also why I'm a little bit confused, or not confused, I guess, more perplexed without a very blatant direction because of the follow through being weak. So going over to the 1-hour time frame next, kind of the same idea here. You can see the last kind of 3-hour candles right here, right? 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour. Turning this sort of region right here, 459, 460, at least it's trying to turn it into support, resistance here, support here. So as long as this can maintain, there is still, definitely some potential here for the bulls, right? Come back, retest, and then head higher. Absolutely. But the most ideal scenario is to gap up, which I'll go over more on the daily. But you can see the 1 hour 9 EMA and previous resistance now seemingly support. So far, so good. This needs to continue. And again, we do not want to lose about 459 going into as early as tomorrow, because that could cause problems, because the 1 hour SMI, it's pretty up here, guys. It is definitely pretty extended. So this would give it time for it to cool off. So, we don't want to see that, because if we lose this, then that means it's time for the 1 hour SMI to reset and cool off. And that also most likely means the price is going to come back to cool off, potentially back to the low 450s, maybe very high 440s, right? Somewhere around this region right here. Wouldn't fully shock me if we lose about 459. So, if you want a faster move to the upside sooner, yeah, you want to hold 459 to 460. So that's kind of that perspective there. Going over to the 4 hour now, right now, this is where things are starting to get a little more interesting. Another reason why I wouldn't want to lose about 459-ish, especially going into tomorrow's 4 hour candle, which is going to start obviously, well, right here, right at the edge, and almost, the apex, if you will, of this potential rising wedge that we are in. Because if we lose that, then we start losing and getting under this sort of rising wedge pattern, which also would be obviously not the best thing in the world. So, in my opinion, definitely watch for 459 roughly tomorrow, guys. That is not a level we want to lose, and especially start closing 15, 1 hour, 4 hour daily candles below. That would show some potential short-term weakness setting into the stock. And again, I'll move back down to get a stronger retest of about 450. Again, low 450s, very high 440s. Wouldn't be unheard of by any means whatsoever. Also, we have the 4 hour SMI, again, on the upper area of, the upper echelon, if you will, of this sort of range, which again, usually more often than not always, it's not perfect, nothing is perfect, but more often than not, again, if we just zoom out, whenever this thing is towards the upper end of the spectrum, like we take a look at all this price action here, right? And again, you can just pause the screen and compare. When the 4 hour SMI was towards the top of the range, we were pretty close to a top. When it was at the bottom of the range, we were pretty close to a bottom. And it was pretty much doing that the whole way through for like almost every single move. Not every single move, this one arguably being the one that was slightly false, but it was still somewhat correct. But for the most part, again, pause the screen. I'm not going to go over every single instance, and you can just, double check it for yourself and verify it for yourself. But again, the point I'm just trying to make is we're once again up in the upper echelon of this with this rising wedge. So this is why I said the bulls, if they want to see a stronger move above this kind of 460, very low 460s range up into that sort of, we'll say 480 to the low 480s region, somewhere up here, which is near recent all-time highs, we want to get either off the get-go tomorrow, within the first half of the day, we want a nice strong move to the upside without losing 459, or even the best case scenario, a gap up, which is where it takes me to the daily time frame, right? And this is what I was saying with the Nvidia. Remember, the Nvidia also was at those green Fibonacci's, and this could have been a rejection. I mean, obviously now we're looking at it in hindsight, it blatantly wasn't, but there was previous times, many times over, where this was a strong rejection on Nvidia into a sharp sell-off. This obviously wasn't one of those cases, but the easiest way to get past something that could be a problem is you just gap above it or gap below it, right? Whichever one it is, resistance, gap above, support, gap below for the bears. That's what the bulls want to see from Tesla. If Tesla can essentially, honestly, for the most part, pull an Nvidia here, because you can see we're pretty much closing right in that daily green fib still. We're pretty much dead smack in it. That would be the ideal scenario. Nice, maybe, I don't know, 0.5% even gap up, right? Even a 0.5% gap up would be pretty decent. That will take us to about the 460s, 463-ish region, and then turn this area back into support and then head higher. Again, literally the Nvidia move right here, literally the exact same thing. This would be the ideal scenario. This should, and honestly could even see Tesla into the 480s as early as tomorrow, maybe Thursday. Very quick, very fast move. But the reason I'm saying it's very quick, very fast move is because of the SMIs, because the SMIs don't necessarily take into account speed. It's more about the overall general momentum, but it's not necessarily speed, because a stock can rally really hard, and this SMI indicator isn't going to rocket to the upside of the, from like say the bottom spectrum to the upper spectrum like instantly, right? It doesn't do that. It does it relative, based on the actual momentum. So I don't know, maybe there's a stock I can think of that just rocketed very aggressively. I don't know. I'm trying to think of one real quick. Maybe SoFi? I don't know. No, not SoFi. SoFi is not the best example I'm looking for. There's a stock that just did it. Lemonade. I think Lemonade is not too bad. Not the best, I guess, in the world either. But the point I'm just trying to make is the fact that if the stock just completely rockets up very substantially, very quickly, the SMI, it wouldn't fully invalidate the SMI. And that speed of movement to the upside would still be a valid move given where the SMI currently is, which is of course, kind of in that upper sort of overbought, if you will, sort of range. So again, hopefully that makes sense. quick, fast move to the 480s. That's what I want to see. And honestly, tomorrow should be the day. If tomorrow we don't see that, and especially if tomorrow Tesla is even, more flaccid than it was today off of this breakout, yeah, 459 should be that level to watch, below which we can see a little bit of a, cool off on the stock as the 4-hour and the 1-hour SMIs also get that small little cool off to the downside, and we get a nice stronger retest once again of about 450, give or take a few dollars, of course. So that'll be what I'm watching for on kind of that 4-hour and daily time frame, especially with these green Fibonacci's and the red MACD. So there's a lot of contradicting factors here, right? It's not as blatantly obvious as to what the stock really just truly wants to do. It's not the cleanest movement in the entire world, to be completely honest with you, right? It's definitely not the sexiest looking movement I've ever seen in my life. So not the biggest fan of it, to be completely honest with you, but that's kind of what I got right now. And that's kind of my current perspective on all these different time frames and what I'm looking for. The easiest way to put it, honestly, hold 459, ideally gap up above the low 460s, retest 460, head higher to 480. That is the easiest move. Break below 459, most likely going to 450. That is kind of the easiest way I can think about it and the easiest way I can explain what I see moving forward on the stock. And then of course we'll have to reiterate and reevaluate, I should say, from there based on which move we get, of course. But that's probably the easiest way I can think of it right now. But it's in a bit of a pickle, right? It's in a bit of a pickle. It's not the cleanest looking movement right now that I'm very confident in, honestly, either direction as of right now, unfortunately. I do still slightly lean bullish, I will admit, but I'm not overwhelmingly bullish, if that makes sense. Still, I'm actually in a position. I am in a position, but again, 459 is kind of that level where I'm watching pretty closely for. Options flow, right? Overall, definitely more bullish than bearish flow today. Absolutely, no questions asked. But towards the end of the day, we are seeing some, battlegrounds between the bulls and the bears. For instance, we're seeing some short-term calls come in, 187K, 267K, 700K, some of them for November, some of them also for being this week as well for the calls. But then we're also seeing some bears, 2.6 million, 450 put for November 7th. Okay, then we have one up here, for instance, we have a 500K 460 put for this week as well, right? And then we have, what is this? A 460 call, 460K for 460 strike for this week. The next week we have a 700K, almost 480 put. It's a pretty decent battleground here, right? Even the options flow seems kind of confused, to be honest with you. I'm not really seeing a blatant, clear direction in either move right now, in either upside or downside, as of this very moment, unfortunately. But it is what it is. In terms of the overall market, very, very bullish market. You can see once the VIX ended up breaking down below this orange line, the market has just been pretty much unstoppable, right? Feels like how much higher can it really go? Well, again, when the VIX is hibernating under the orange line, the market is in full bull territory, guys. It is, in full bullish territory. We are arguably moving up on a slightly declining volume. You can argue that is a potential concern. And, the market is also quite extended from the 9 exponential moving average. Even from here, it will take about a, 1.5% move almost, right, for the market just to meet the 9 exponential moving average. But again, we don't have to necessarily move down to it. We can also go sideways as it comes to us, or we meet somewhere in the middle, maybe 1% or so lower. So that's, worth mentioning. But the market, very bullish, absolutely. But it is a little overextended here. Very, very short term. So we could get a bit of a cool off, maybe a little bit of a move to the downside, maybe closer to the 670-ish or 680, I should say, region for SPY, especially as we enter a pretty big week, guys. We have a lot of earnings starting tomorrow. The big dogs are all reporting. We have Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, Google, Meta reporting tomorrow and Thursday. So, and we have the Fed tomorrow as well. So we have a pretty stacked next couple of days. So let's see how that goes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.